If you're trying to get into apartment locating, then check this out. Here are the 3 top biggest mistakes that are common getting involved in the apartment locating niche. So the first one is scheduling appointments for their clients too far in the future and in person. The second one is working remotely too soon before they have any experience of what it's like to work in office. And the third biggest mistake is working without a CRM and never really setting up a drip campaign to follow up with all their past and new clients. So let's get into all of these reasons right now so you guys can understand what not to do if you're trying to leverage apartment locating inside of your real estate career to hit 6 figures, just like myself and over 350 of my other students. So let's get into it. All right, number 1, scheduling appointments too far in the future and in person. So the thing is, when renters are looking for an apartment, you have to understand that in the business, naturally, these renters are constantly looking, really whenever they feel like it, at any moment, at any time. It could be early in the morning, right before work, it can be on their lunch break, or it can be late at night, right? So a big thing I see apartment locators do, especially when I used to work in office, I would see a lot of people actually taking, manual phone calls, first of all, and filling out their information and all their pre-qual manually, right? We'll get into why that's not a good idea in a different video. But locators, I would see them schedule calls way too far out in the future, like for the end of the week or into next week. Okay, that is so far for someone to just up and stop looking for apartments, because expecting them to trust you, someone they might have never worked with, to find them their exact perfect apartment for a week or two down the line, right? Just a week out is just way too long. All right, people are gonna forget. They might call around by accident on other ads and work with another more competent real estate agent that's able to help them on spot, or maybe the next following day or two, right? So if you want to maximize the amount of time you put into this job, then go ahead and schedule appointments super far out, like a week or two in advance, like a lot of locators are doing, right? That's how you maximize the time you put into this job. But if you want to maximize the amount of money you get out of this job and lower the amount of time you put in, then what you need to do is you need to understand that booking a call or booking an appointment more than 3 or 4 days out in the future is just really, really too far. Like, I understand sometimes you might get a call late on Monday and you'll schedule a call for Friday, right? Because Friday is the end of a work week. That should be like the maximum amount of time, but even that is kind of too long, right? That would be like 4 days in the future. So how do you solve this, right? What we've been doing in our coaching program is we've been teaching our real estate agent students to use a tool called Calendly to shoot over to new prospects so they can just book online and see the availability for themselves, and then them choose a time and a date, right? And what we do strategically is that we go to the Calendly settings and we block off any other dates that aren't exactly 3 days into the future based around the times that we want to actually be on a call, right? So like 9 to 6 p.m. Or you can adjust that if you're not such a super early morning person, you can adjust that to 10 to 5. There's a lot of customization that you can do inside of Calendly, right? So that's how you defeat that, is just don't even let people have the option to book a call on your calendar by blocking it off strategically. Using a tool called Calendly is basically the best way to stay organized with all of your appointments, whether they're in person or online over Zoom calls. That's what we're teaching exclusively. It works for a lot of good reasons in the apartment locating industry. But hey, even if you're doing this job old school and you're booking appointments to come in to see you physically in person in your office, you should still be using Calendly because it does allow you to defeat that first really common problem of scheduling appointments way too far. All right, so now that we've tackled that first common problem, that sort of brings me to the next point, the second biggest common thing that a new apartment locator does incorrectly. So number 2 is working remotely too soon, right? You just heard me talk about working in person and then working over Zoom calls remotely, right, through Wi-Fi. Well, we've proven that you can actually make more money and put less time into this job if you eventually shift over to working remotely over Wi-Fi. So not going into your office and not dealing with people face to face in the apartment locator niche. I know this isn't really relevant or that realistic if you're working as a realtor, because, you know, first of all, people take buying a house way more seriously than an apartment, and people really want to actually view and tour the house that they might buy and invest in. It's usually people's largest investment in their entire life, right? So it is customary to, you know, go out, show property in person, build a real connection, because it's such a big deal to buy a house, right? And also, how would you get around a lockbox if some properties that your clients are interested in are on a traditional lockbox that's not digital, right? So then you're forced to have to go out in person. So naturally, in the business of being a realtor, you know, this wouldn't really make a lot of sense. You can't really work remotely if you're a realtor, but as an apartment locator, you can, right? The only thing is, you don't want to work remotely too soon without having at least 1 month or so experience in the business, sort of in a natural in-person office setting, right? I think it's really, really critical for apartment locators to work in office, really understand the environment of what an apartment locator office really looks like and seems like. Because chances are you can see other people taking manual phone calls and doing things manually and typing out manual emails, right? So that way you can appreciate the power of automation when done right? So it's interesting to see other locators do the job wrong, but mainly it just really gives you that organic feeling of being an apartment locator and surrounding yourself in an industry where it did all start in person. We're in real estate, so it's good to get familiar with how this business started, you know, before Calendly, before Zoom calls, before everything's been done over the internet remotely. It's a good idea to understand that basis of the business, so that way you know why working remotely and via software like a proper calendar and doing Zoom calls, you know, you can see why that adds a lot of value and why that's saving you a lot of time, right? It's like if we never had horses, you wouldn't really appreciate what a car is, right? So it's important to just know both worlds, right? And I would also argue that when you do a handful of in-person appointments as an apartment locator for, you know, a month or so, a solid month, you can really build that skill of connecting with someone right in front of you and like feeling out their vibe and their presence and just learning how to deal with people in the real world as an adult face to face, right? So you don't want to skip over that if you're new to real estate, but you do want to limit your in-person, in-office, you know, work experience to no longer than a month, because after a month, you're pretty much comfortable with how it's going to go in an office. So then you need to start working smart and then working remotely with building, you know, sophisticated software tools that you're leveraging to make your business better. So limit the in-person office appointments to 1 month only, and then start working smarter, because it is year 2023. These solutions do exist and we teach them. So if you need help setting up all this stuff in the back end, like auto follow-up, drip campaigns, how to work with a CRM, reach out to my team and we'd be happy to help you get the most out of this industry. And the last thing I'll say about the second point is that, you know, usually when you work in office, if you have selected an apartment locating sponsoring broker that full-time, you know, deals with apartment locating, not traditional sales, you know, chances are they're going to provide you a handful of office leads that are free anyway, right? So as you're, you know, sort of building up that experience of working in office, chances are your brokerage firm is going to give you leads, right? Whether they're office calls or people walk in. So it's really critical for you to work free leads and earn, you know, a few $1,000s that month for free without having to learn how to do your own lead generation. That's really a big deal, right? So there's a lot of perks for working in the office, right? But then once you want to really scale things and make the most amount of money you can, then work remote. Okay, so let's go over to number 3, the biggest common problem and mistake that I see apartment locators doing, okay? So I'm no exception to number 3, never working with a CRM and never really setting up a drip campaign to auto follow up with your clientele, right? It has never been more important in real estate as a real estate agent to follow up with your clientele in a niche like apartment locating, even over being a traditional realtor, because when you really think about the number of clients that we work with on a monthly basis, it's 10 times more if we were realtors dealing with traditional house buying and selling, right? People rent apartments super fast, a lot of the times last second, right? Which has a lot of benefits because you close them faster, you receive your commission checks a lot faster when people put off apartment renting for the last second, right? Or sometimes abruptly their work will have to move them, so they're just like kind of scrambling around to find a rental really fast, right? So that's a lot of our clientele is actually actually in that situation. They're just kind of fumbling around for an apartment because of like a work move or whatever the case is, right? But it's great because you get to help these people. They make a decision faster naturally because they're not, they don't care as much. I don't want to say they don't care about, the place they're going to call home and live, but usually when someone's renting an apartment, it's not like apartments are drastically different, right? You're not going to have an extended covered patio. Like if it were a house, you're not going to have a 3-car garage. You're not going to have 2 stories. Like the layouts are, for the most part, pretty basic, right? Kitchen, living room, does it have a separate dining? Is the apartment newer? Like, are the finishes nice? Very basic stuff with apartments, right? So the point I'm trying to make here is that people take selecting an apartment a whole lot less seriously than if they were purchasing a house. So that means these people in this business of apartment locating naturally don't take as long to make a decision, right? Especially if they're just kind of fumbling around for an apartment, right? Those are the best clients because they're like, hey, I'm trying to get an apartment. Is it close to where I need to be? Yes, that's checked off. Okay, is it decently nice? Like, are the finishes okay? Yes, that's checked off. And then is it new? So that way there's some kind of energy efficiency. Yes, that's checked off. Boom. And then they rent the apartment. Okay, so that is really great, right? So in this business, we work with just a lot more clientele volume. The volume increases, right? So, whereas a realtor might work with like 10 leads in a month, like 10 good leads or so in a month, okay? And they might close 2 or 3 of them, like 20-30% close rate out of the 10 leads, right? 2 or 3 house closings is great. I mean, that's fantastic for a realtor to do. If you can close 2 houses or 3 in a month, well, you're just a very successful realtor, right? But you have to multiply that by 10 if you're an apartment locator, because these commissions aren't as large as house commissions. They're like $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000, but we work with 10 times more leads in a month, right? So a locator that's super successful and crushing it might work 100 leads in a month, and we might close 10 or 20 or 30 leads in a month, right? Netting 10 or 20 or 30 or $40,000 that month if you're a very successful apartment locator. So the point I'm trying to make here is that because the volume of how many people and human beings we talk to, it's never been more important to filter these contacts into a CRM system properly, so that way we can stay in touch with so many clientele that were interested in buying an apartment at that point in time when we closed them and represented them. But what do people naturally do after becoming an apartment renter, right? They're gonna buy a house eventually. So if you're working with 100 people every single month as opposed to maybe like a dozen if you were a realtor, that's a lot of contacts and a lot of relationships you could be making and working on and improving, so that way later, if you want, you can help them buy a house, right? So it's such a huge mistake when apartment locators don't use a CRM and set up a proper drip campaign, even a basic one with email, text, sort of reminding these leads that you can help them again next year find another apartment, or if they're looking to buy a house, then you can assist them with that as well, because apartment locators are still licensed real estate agents. And what a lot of people don't know is that you don't even really need access to the MLS or a super key and pay all of those fees that are very expensive like normal realtors to join the National Association of Realtors Real Estate Board. You don't need to join that board and pay all those fees to help someone buy a house, because there's like another little micronation real estate where renters or clientele in general, they want to purchase a new home, right? And if you've been in real estate for a long time, then you will understand that sometimes clients that are interested in buying a new home only want a new construction home. And so those typically aren't even on MLS in the first place, right? And if they want a new home, they're going to look at specific new home communities, right? And to build on that, if a client wants a new home in a specific area, because that's how everyone works. If you're a human interested in buying a house, you really are only interested in like one area, right? I mean, realistically. So all you've got to do is just get familiar with those 2 or 3 new home communities in that one area that, this client is interested in looking in. And all you do is you introduce them to those 2 or 3 new home construction communities without MLS. You can bypass all of that noise and still represent them and help them purchase a new home just by showing them like 3 communities in their area that they want to purchase. That's how it works in a lot of markets in Texas. If someone's interested in like Northeast Tech Ridge area of Austin, I mean, there's like a handful. You can count realistically the new home communities on one hand that are going to fit their budget and price range, right? So the point is you don't even need MLS. So you definitely need to set up a CRM and build a relationship and a rapport and, repetitive emails and texts to try to convert your past clientele into new home buyers, right? It's very easy to do, and you can do this on the back end automatically. But I mean, if you don't have this set up, then you don't get that benefit. And that could be thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars in commission in a year if you set up a proper and basic CRM. All right, guys, so those are the top 3 mistakes that new apartment locators make, or real estate agents that are experienced, but they hear that the locating niche is very lucrative, so they try to become a locator and then they do this, right? So don't do these 3 mistakes. Avoid them. If you would like assistance on how to work in this business properly, how to set up correct, basic back-end systems, so that way you're not doing anything wrong, right? And you're optimized for success by putting less time in the business by leveraging software and digital marketing, then reach out to my team, click the link below, have a conversation with us. Maybe we can help you in whatever situation you're in. I mean, heck, maybe you click the link below and you realize that locating, this might not be a good niche for you. Who knows? But if you are interested in apartment locating, at least do it correctly. Have a conversation with professionals in the industry. I've been in the industry for 9 years, and my team and I are dedicated and ready to help you scale in this business of apartment locating the right way, right? So click the link below. Let's have a conversation, see where you're at in your career and in your current situation. And heck, you never know, we might be able to add a lot of value into your career. So click the link below. I hope you appreciated the top 3 biggest mistakes that new apartment locators make. And let's just go over them real quick. So scheduling appointments way too far in the future and in person. Number 2 was working remotely way too soon before you have that in-office experience. That's a mistake, and then you're missing out on free leads. And then the 3rd mistake was never setting up a proper CRM, even if it's a basic one, because that's tens of thousands of dollars lost that you could have made basically automatically on the back end. All right, guys, I hope you appreciated the video, and I'll see you on the next one.